And boom, according to that, I am live. Welcome, my name's Yuko Simon. This is Tokyo Tonight, as some people are pointing out on Twitter. Kind of really Tokyo this morning, I guess. It's 11:30 in Tokyo at the moment. I know it's 10:30 p.m. on the East Coast. These apartments, well, they're not really kind of half apartments, half hotel. So on the weekends we get people come in, especially now it's getting very summery here in Seattle. And yeah, the floors are like kind of hard tiles, and so people moving around these steel chairs on the floors if they're above. Yeah, they do that sometimes, and the result is that it gets a bit noisy. I am going to make an adjustment to the camera and see if I can point it up just a little bit, because it's at a bit of a weird angle there. That's much more comfortable. So yeah, good to see you. Like I said, sorry I wasn't on last week. It's just been crazy. I guess it's kicked in that I've got like 1 month left in America before I go back to Japan. And yeah, you know, thinking what's my bucket list? What are things that I'd like to do? What are trips that I'd like to do, and so on. And it's just hard to come back. It takes me about an hour and a half to go through and pick out topics for the show. And plus, you know, if I've just had a really crazy day, I'm exhausted on top of, you know, coming back. It means I have to, given traffic coming back into town, doing this on Sunday evening and doing it, you know, in Japan I do this at like 10:30 p.m., which means I can get my day done. But yeah, I've struggled to do this on the weekends. Today I had a really lazy day. So today was good, and I didn't do it last week. I thought I might be able to do it during the week, but then I've got work and stuff like that. It's actually, you know, it's not easy to do, but yeah, I'm hoping I will be able to. Well, we'll see. I'll have some weekends where I'm traveling the next couple of weeks, including mid-June when I'm going to Los Angeles. I'm looking forward to meeting some people. By the way, if you're in Los Angeles from June 14, I should check what are those dates. It's that weekend of June 14. I will be in Los Angeles, staying in Huntington Beach, that far end, although there are some people I want to meet in Santa Monica. I know the opposite side of Los Angeles. I've never been to Los Angeles before, so I'm really looking forward to that. In fact, it's not the week of the 14th, it is the week of the 16th to the 18th. Hoping that I'm back now. I'm just watching my screen. I know there's a bit of a delay, but hoping this is back. It looks like it's working now over here anyway. Although, let's see. Streaming, software working. Hey, can you? Here we go. Okay, I seem to be back. Good to see you. Anyway, like I was just saying, I'll be in Los Angeles from June 16 to 19. So if you're around then, we'd love to say hello. I'll see what I can do about doing something live. It's always a little bit hard when you're out and about, but yeah. Also, this whole thing with OBS crashing. I know people really hate Streamlabs OBS, which is what I'm using on my desktop setup back in Japan. I'm definitely going back to Streamlabs OBS. OBS, I'm not, you know, it's crashed a couple of times during the stream now, so I guess I'll stop doing that. But yeah, great to see people rocking in. Let's see who's in the chat. We've got Rainbow. Oi, good to see you. Never fear, Shubas is here. Shubas, glad that you made it from Panama. Good to see you in here. Darren Schmee. Hey, good to see you, Darren. Wow, excellent. Got Eric. Eric from Vancouver, thanks for popping by. Yes, indeed. Would love to. Yes, let me know if or when you are in Japan. Would love to meet up. Yeah, great to meet you in Vancouver, actually. Yeah, recommendations about Fukuoka. My Fukuoka recommendations are not up to date. The best person to follow for good tips on Fukuoka is Michaela, Micaela, who happens to be Canadian as well. She's the Fukuoka, she's hooked in with the tourist board there, so she's up to date on all the latest good stuff to do down there. She is who you should follow. Believe in yourself. Good to see you indeed. Crashes be damned. Yes, indeed, we're back. Kei Midori, good to see you. Hey, Kei Midori. Sashiburi, haven't seen you for ages. Good to see you. Yes, nice. I really appreciate that some people showed up, even though I did this on short notice. The reason I've been doing nothing today is yesterday I actually went out with a guy who used to work at YouTube in Japan, who I actually met when I originally some of my videos got featured and so on back in the day. Yeah, really, really cool guy who's done a bunch of interesting things that I've actually worked with him, or I've worked in the same company as him at other times. And he's like a real serious marathon runner and trail runner from this part of the world. And he said, "Hey, let's go out trail running." And I've been meaning to go out trail running. I'm in Seattle, and now like the sunset today is like at 9 p.m. And the weather has suddenly gotten good after like 3 months of just straight drizzle and grayness. The weather here is now good. So yeah, one thing I'm definitely meaning to do for the rest of my trip is get in. I've got a hike scheduled for tomorrow. Yesterday I said, let's go trail running and go running in the forest on hiking trails. So we went to Tiger Mountain, east of Seattle, and went up, and I sort of asked, after getting kidney stones and stuff, I don't want to get dehydrated. How long is the run? Like, should I be carrying a bunch of water with me? And he's like, 4 miles. So I was like, okay, well, 4 miles, 7K, that's fine, I can do that. So we can run 6K, I'll come back to the car, leave my water in the car. We ended up running, well, we half ran, half walked, 15 miles, 24 kilometers. So my legs, it was great, it was wonderful, magical life experience, but my legs are now done, and I'm going for a hike tomorrow, 8 mile hike tomorrow. It is just a hike, and I will just be walking. But more shots for the Insta, more getting out into nature. I do understand why people in the Pacific Northwest get so into nature, because you're so huddled inside from all the gray and the rain for like 2/3 of the year, that when there's any sunshine, you get this urge to go running outside. I feel it myself. The weather is spectacular here. It's like 20 degrees and sunny. It's that little sweet spot of weather that you only get in Tokyo for like 2 or 3 weeks a year. You get for 2 or 3 months here during summer. The rest of the year is a complete write-off. It's miserable, as I've learned. But it is getting into the nice time of year, and I'm enjoying it. So I'm still enjoying the American experience, no doubt. Enjoying the food, enjoying the people, enjoying being here, but also looking forward very much to getting back to Japan and going back on the regular schedule. So apologies for the intermittent streaming schedule. I'm trying to stick to the once a week, and I feel bad when I miss a week. I am trying. We'll see how it goes for the remaining weeks. But I'll probably skip that week of June 16. But if you're in Seattle, I can in Los Angeles, I can see you in person. I might actually also thinking whether I take some time off work. I've got the person whose maternity leave I'm replacing that brought me over to America. She's going to be back in a couple of weeks, and I don't want to spend a lot of money traveling around, but I would like to explore America a little bit more since I'm here. So I might do some more trips and might even see what I can do about some meetups. Possibly, West Coast is easier, so going down maybe the Bay Area. So we'll see. Anyway, but yay! Hey, look at that. We got Erin in here. Great to see you. Hey, Erin. Glad that you made it in. And yes. A shame that I guess you didn't get to make it out to the West Coast on this trip, but hearing that you might be going to Japan after I go back to Japan. So it would be awesome to meet up. Wonderful moderator. And everybody in here. So thanks for keeping me company. The other big challenge that I've had while I've been here, of course, is Twitter's shut off the API. This whole show format is based on moving my tweets into Flipboard and then showing my Flipboard magazine. And now those are all broken, and I'm still kind of struggling for how to like pick out the topics and arrange it as a magazine. And I'm using Flipboard tonight. I'm using a different format to my usual one. I like the Flipboard format, but Flipboard doesn't work with anything anymore. So I've got to figure that out. So I'll go through the topics that I've picked out, which really I should be catching up like 2 weeks, but that's too far back to go. So I'll just go through the stuff that's on this week, Japan-related news and my take, although I also must admit, while I'm kind of keeping up with Japan news, I'm not following, like the first couple of months I was still watching NHK News every day. I'm not doing it every day anymore. I'm really focused on work and just maximizing the time that I've been out. I guess you can see from my Insta, which I suppose I could even, if you follow my Facebook or my Instagram more than my Twitter lately, I've been sharing pics. So for example, I found Turo. There's a car sharing company where you can pick out. I've always dreamed of driving a BMW i8, and I got an i8 for the day with the scissor doors. That was super cool. My trip to Vancouver and so on. I've been sharing little pictures and 1-minute videos and stuff from all the stuff that I'm doing. So you can keep up with what I'm doing here in America and all of that. But for this show, trying in the gaps to keep up with what's going on in Japan. But I can give my commentary on that. But See me in Tokyo. Indeed, life gets tougher once you run out of facial tissue. Facial tissues. I prefer tissues, although I don't really understand what either of those mean. Yeah, but anyway, the forgotten. Okay, I don't understand. But anyway, remember, as always, if you've got topics for me, I mean, this is it. I am really less keeping up with Japan stuff. I've got topics, but you can give me topics, questions, requests. Say my name, Hiko Simon. It'll flash up orange there in the comments. I'm looking just behind the camera there. In fact, looking a little bit above the camera. So yeah, you can ask me for topics. Otherwise, I'm going to go through the topics that I have. And yeah, it's just good to see you all and good to be back. And sorry I've had trouble struggling a little bit with figuring out a good schedule. But we will be back on the normal program a month from now. 4 months in America, by the way. It's been... I should do some sort of big roundup, probably more like a recorded show with my overall impressions of America. It is funny, I got to say, so far, it's kind of half a joke, but half not a joke. The highlight of my trip to America so far has been the weekend in Vancouver. The highlight of the United States so far has been Canada. Just in terms of, if this was like Vancouver, I would be really considering, oh, how can I move here? Seattle's cool, though, and I must admit, it makes such a big difference when the weather's good. I'm enjoying it a lot at the moment, which, again, is why I'm in and out. But anyway, into the topics. So, yeah, going top down. Kind of interesting one here. Most people in Japan want to use AI at work. It surprises me how many news stories there are about local city councils and companies like proactively wanting to dive into ChatGPT. And this is consistent with other things that I've seen about things like Sachifu, am I back in Japan? Is a question. I am not. I am still, pardon me, I'm still in Seattle until June 30. I'm going down to Los Angeles in June 16 to 19. But yeah, and Eric, yes. That's right, including meeting up with you. But 1 month to go. 1 month to go in America. So most people want to use AI at work, but worried it'll take away jobs. There's this thing about Japan that I like, which is how Japanese are like inherently, I think, more open-minded overall on average in general towards technology and robots. You see these stories where people do trials and people are open to using like robots to keep old people company. And the old people seem okay with that, I've seen when there have been various sorts of technologies, which even like when they're not like set for release in Japan yet, Japanese are like techno geeks. They like to get the stuff and figure it out and use it early. It's particularly interesting with ChatGPT though, because I'm not using it a lot, but I'm using it a little bit, and I do find it a fascinating technology. In fact, actually, there's a funny. See, I can't share this because it was on Twitter, but there was a story I saw on Twitter today of a lawyer who's facing like disbarment because he submitted like court filings with made-up cases, which were cases that he apparently is based on like preparing the whole submission based on ChatGPT. And this is the thing, ChatGPT is super intelligent, believable, autocomplete, that can make stuff up convincingly, which is where it can be super useful if you have enough knowledge to be able to use it and say, don't do that. And it's not good if you rely on it blindly, as this guy who may be about to lose his job. I mean, I shouldn't laugh, but geez, check if the cases exist before you blindly accept it and submit it to a court. I mean, there's got to be a comedy, well, maybe lawyer comedy skit somewhere about submitting a filing to a court with made-up cases that support your arguments. Geez, again, but I can totally see how that would sort of happen. I mean, I guess it was a matter of when rather than if. It's really funny to me, though, that you hear about like Spanish speakers, for example, here in America, and you hear in Europe and so on, who talk about how obviously degraded the performance of ChatGPT is in other languages. So much of the training data and the human alignment of the data in all these generative AI models is based on English data. And there's this kind of assumption that, it must just work in foreign languages, and it's okay, but it's not great, it's weird. But it's kind of funny to me how, in spite of that, how like aggressively Japan is embracing it. And I think it does come down to this idea that Japan is just kind of inherently technophiliac. That's a word that I made up, but I'm sure exists. They're not the opposite of technophobic. I think Western civilization, we kind of want to know that there's a soul in operation. There's a human at the controls, and we're less likely to trust. And Japanese, I think, are more, again, and I guess I could speculate on the cultural significance and so on of why do Japanese trust inanimate things more and technology more. And I don't know, if I were to take a guess, I would say, folk religion in Japan sees gods in everything, in inanimate things. Ki attaches to the human, the life spirit attaches to inanimate objects, and religion attaches to inanimate objects. Plus the fact, this whole like Christian, more, theology is based on humans being separate from nature. We don't trust anything that sort of isn't human driven. I think there's some really fascinating cultural notes around this whole thing, how Japanese are so much, and it makes Japan a fun place to be, that people are willing to dive into the tech stuff. Although, it's all different. Japanese don't trust people. They don't trust people. Like, no one would put their real names onto social media, and hence we ended up with Mixi, which was just a list of random numbers and letters and photos of cats, which is good for some. So it's kind of cool how they approach it differently. But again, it's cool how Japanese are embracing it. They're worried about it taking away jobs. Certainly if your job is just doing the same thing over and over again, and it'll make those things. It's not so much to me that ChatGPT and so on will take those jobs away. It's that it will make it easier to make the automating software. You won't need to wait 2 years for an available software engineer to make a program to automate your thing. You'll be able to do it yourself. And that's kind of cool, but there you go. Shuba says the word is technocratic. That sounds... Now you're reminding me. The first CD I ever bought was Technotronic. A Belgian, I believe, actually Benelux, techno house group from the late 1980s. And I don't know, the word technocratic, it's you just reminded me. They've got a track called "The Speed is Technotronic," which for some reason that phrase reminds me of Shubas, but that's a total sidetrack. But yeah, I don't know, Kamidori, that Japan is so late to follow. I think people here are very mistrusting and worried and so on about it. I think Japanese are more open-minded, and frankly, the technology, is not as good in Japanese, and that's natural. I think it's cool that the Japanese government is thinking about what to do about training it better. But yeah, it's super interesting times. I'm sort of in one. I mean, obviously the Bay Area, Seattle, is the heart of things. But Seattle and the IT thing here is kind of a second Bay Area at the moment, and I'm also very much in the heart of this. And it's an amazing time in human history, actually, to be here. I feel very lucky to be here in America in the middle of all of this, where I have some visibility on it. But what I love about Japan is Japan can be far away, and they don't wait. They do dive in and do it on their own terms, which is always cool. Marcin Sebula, maybe Japanese people will not get fired if the performance of each employee is 10x's, unlike Europe or America. It's less scary. Yeah. It's kind of, the whole thing about productivity in Japan being so low, and I think productivity is low because Japanese care so much about process. My personal experiences, you very seldom get rewarded for doing something faster. You'll get rewarded for, like being an artisanal, furniture maker or something, cutting corners and finding a faster way to do something. You don't get points. You get points for doing it perfectly and slowly and whatever. But yeah, and also, as I've said on this thing before, I think one false hope about AI is that it's going to make our lives easier. The human experience of productivity improving technology is that it just it's a pie eating contest where when you have to eat more pie, it just means that we end up having to do more. But it is really fascinating tech. So yeah, that's the first one anyway. I love the take in Japan. Something that AI was not to blame for, may be able to help. Who knows? What a debacle. I've been following the news over the last few weeks. Again, very close to my heart. Both public sector IT, that I do not work in anymore, but I was a lawyer for. And my last job, I was actually, I think I can say now, I've been in a job where my job was to be the sort of head of legal in a consulting company that did public sector. So it's kind of funny. The fact that a non-Japanese could be like the head legal in charge of public sector procurement, like of IT, is weird. And it was literally because the other people before me all were on stress leave or ran away screaming. I ended up in the role. But I've been involved in public sector IT. I kind of know more than I really wish I did know. I don't do it anymore. But I can kind of see, it was kind of foreseeable how, I mean, I still support what the digital agency is doing. Well, yeah, my number, of course, it's a little bit dystopian that they've created a single like social security ID, which Japan does not have, and they're forcing now everyone to use it for everything: health insurance, medical, tax, bank. And it's clear what there are some good things and there are some bad things from this. The good things are that at least by so much of government systems and databases are isolated, and there's so much sort of inefficiency when you go to try to do any public service type thing. You have to fill out 10 forms or whatever, even though the same information exists in other places and so on. So the idea that just based on an ID that you can do so much more, and the improvements are already coming through. You can already get your Jumikyo, your citizen certificate, all this sort of stuff now online, or at these kiosks and whatever. It's faster, it's easier, it's more convenient. And the government itself can keep track of people better. Of course, the downsides being the government can keep track better. And particularly what they're really going for, what's really at the heart of this is the Ministry of Finance, being able to track bank accounts and tax payments and so on. They can join the dots, or they're going to be able to join the dots for people who are earning cash jobs. And the classical case of cash earning jobs in Japan is the old mizu shobai. It's the hostesses and hosts and stuff like that. It's jobs where you get paid in cash and where, you sort of try to keep secret. I mean, a lot of people who do those hostess jobs have day jobs, working in, where they're prohibited from having second jobs. And, they don't want their co-workers to know that they're a Ginza hostess at night or something. And they do that to support themselves. But, of course, they're also not paying tax as a result of that. So kind of surfacing all of that and surfacing when someone has two incomes and is taxing them as such and making that visible to their employers, that's going to be one big disruption. But of course, from the government's perspective, they're trying to find ways to collect more tax money without increasing consumption tax, which is the best tax to increase in terms of, 1% equals a lot more revenue than increasing, for example, income tax or something like that. So they're trying to find ways to collect revenue without increasing actual taxes, but to be more efficient collecting. And that's what this my number thing is really for the rest of the government, but it does improve the quality of public services. Of course, the thing is, when you've got these hundreds of systems at the central government level and tens of thousands of systems at the local government level, and in most cases they work completely isolated. They're working on isolated 1970s mainframe or server machines that are not connected to any other system. They're not connected to the internet. They're running on outdated software that's completely incompatible with everything else. It's a great thing that they're looking to, make everything work with each other, interoperate and be accessible via the internet and so on. It's the right thing to do. But when you have the companies that have been just basically ripping the Japanese government off, selling them, basically keeping up these old outdated systems for so long, and these same companies are the ones that are supposed to create this massive interconnected now web of governments all tied together by these My Number IDs. It's absolutely inevitable that these companies, which have basically, honestly, been ripping off the government, getting paid for doing almost nothing for 30, 40 years, and been very comfortable, this oligopoly of these large IT SI companies in Japan. These companies, it looks like some of their implementations now, you go to a kiosk at a convenience store and say, give me my citizen's certificate, and it outputs the wrong certificate. They've been collecting and entering their IDs. They've been attaching the wrong IDs to bank accounts, to government systems. And it's causing this chaos that people are going and receiving other people's confidential government personal information, their tax and their social security information, through these systems being set up wrongly by these companies. And there's two possibilities as to what's going wrong. The better possibility is that it's an entry problem, that they just have people who are just crappy at entering manually all the data. But given this is 120 million people multiplied by tens of thousands of systems, you don't want to do that. What you really want to do is be able to capture all the software, and convert the database. You want to do some software that'll just batch convert all the data from this database, and link it with all the My Number IDs. The problem is if that's what's screwed up, which is more likely the case, then it means that the systems are just fundamentally broken. They might not be even able to go back to the old ones. It'll be more expensive. and more troublesome and much harder to fix if it's to do with the way that they migrated the system, if they migrated the data wrong. Again, part of my horrible life. So that's what it looks like has happened, and so it's turning into a bit of a shit show. It was inevitable. It was going to happen with some systems, but we'll see. Already, this is kind of a mess. I don't think it's going to kill it. I think they're going to figure it out. Hopefully, the whole Japanese government won't become like the Mizuho banking IT system, but it's sort of going in that direction. So what can you do? Anyway, just looking back at the comments, I see no one's saying anything to me. No one's asking for questions, comments, or whatever. Remember, say Simon, because I'll just, rather than read every comment, I'm just going to glance up at the screen. But if no one's got any topics for me, I'm going to move on to the next one. But my number, that's the thing. This is an interesting one. A Japanese swatch, like the watches. My first watch, my second watch was a swatch. I like swatches. An exec at Swatch Japan, or Japan Swatch, apparently it's diagnosed with mental illness after suffering what they would call power harassment, workplace bullying from their boss, who turns out to have been a foreign woman who apparently, just listening to this, you'd think this might be a case. Is this another case of a foreigner being bullied by a Japanese manager, or Japanese trying to keep foreign people out, or denying paternity leave, or like these other famous cases? It's actually no, it's the other ways. The victim claims that she was relentlessly scolded by the president of Swatch Group Japan KK, a female foreign national, don't know if she's Swiss or whatever, and subjected to power harassment, as workplace bullying is referred to in Japan. Basically, she was reprimanded, told that she was stupid, low performance, and this resulted in an adjustment disorder. And she is now, and apparently the result of this is that the labor unions are now lobbying for the president of the company to resign. It's kind of funny, and also the thing on both sides about Japan is that, unless you're a contract employee, which an increasing percentage of people are, so I don't think this applies, especially if you're going to Japan and teaching English, you're likely to be a contract employee, which means you can be fired. But if you're like a regular employee, or seishain, an official employee, president or exec with mental health issues from bullying, you cannot be fired. You have to basically agree mutually to split. And the stories that I've heard about cases of companies being told to manage people. I don't know how Twitter did it in Japan, for example. I know the layoffs are possible, but normally you have to pay the people out so that it's mutually agreed. But the idea of a union lobbying for a company president to resign is kind of like the union's whole purpose is to make sure that people cannot be fired in Japan. So hey Aaron, thanks for the dates. It would be awesome to catch up in Tokyo. It's going to be stinking hot. The one thing is I'll be going away from a very nice summer to a very miserable summer. But that's awesome. In fact, we should do a meetup or something while you're there anyway. Okay, that's awesome to know. And believe in yourself. You believe that they will be... Okay, I reading that out of context, I am sorry. I have no idea what that is about. So I'm just going to skip along. This is an interesting one. I saw this. I read it like 4 times. I didn't quite get what was going on. So apparently in Nagano, I have no desire to go here. Everybody, of course, knows what Unit 731 is, but just to go through the obvious, Unit 731 is the biological warfare. They were a subdivision of the Canton Army, the Kwantung Army, which was one of the units that was responsible for World War II, at least for the Japanese invasion of China. Basically against Japanese orders. They independently set up the Manchurian Rail incident that triggered the whole invasion of China. And among the rogue and awful things that the Kwantung Army did, they had this particular unit which was where they had various medical researchers, enormous quotation marks there, that did human vivisections. They did as bad as the worst stuff that the Nazis did, experiments, testing biological weapons, and testing. And it was one of these sort of situations, again, very much like with the Nazis, that the Americans, on the one hand, these people did some of the worst imaginable war crimes, and on the one hand, And so you think imprison them all and burn all the data. But on the other hand, the data that they got was data that could not be gotten any other way on human reactions to those experiments. And the Americans, both from the Nazis and from the Japanese, valued the data. And so they collected the data and sort of agreed to let people go back to quietly being doctors. And there's a small museum in Nagano which basically has little artifacts like medical tools and so on used by the unit, without very much commentary about the fact that these were being done for live human experimentation on Chinese civilians. And so, yeah, there is a debate going on where people lobbying that if they're going to show, any kind of museum exhibit relating to Unit 731, they should include the context that these people were carrying out atrocious crimes against humanity. There's an interesting... this was kind of a disputed thing for a long time as well, where people like the governor of Tokyo, former governor of Tokyo, Shintaro Ishihara, was among the people who sort of denied that Japan did anything wrong in World War II, and that's all made up Chinese propaganda, that sort of thing existed. And so to sort of challenge right-wingers that sort of were trying to whitewash that type of history, was it Saburo Ienaga? For some reason, that's the name that pops in my head. I'm not sure if that was him, but a leftist educator, and most the labor union for teachers in Japan is famously far left-wing. One of those members wrote a textbook basically mapping out, like in the most direct way, all the terrible things that the Japanese fascist people did during World War II and so on. And the Ministry of Education, who has a right not to deny textbooks but to demand edits for inaccuracy, struck out the sections of the book relating to Unit 731 as not proven, which was what he wanted. He baited the Ministry of Education basically into editing his textbook, so that he went to the Supreme Court of Japan, where the Supreme Court of Japan in 2002 affirmed that the fact of the war crimes of Unit 731 and the human vivisections and everything are undeniable facts of history, and that removing those was not within the powers of the Ministry of Education. So in a way, it was a successful way of forcing the issue, putting it as a matter of Supreme Court now record that Unit 731 was terrible, some of the worst human beings in history. So the fact that there's a museum that exists and that is neutral, that here are some mementos of this unit's time in Manchuria, without saying, but I mean, this is like Dr. Mengeler's exhibit where it says he was a doctor and here are some implements that he used. So yeah, there's a debate apparently going on somehow where the education board is talking with the museum, saying that you should have a more balanced exhibit. To which, you would say the Japanese equivalent of no shit Sherlock. I don't know what that would be in Japanese exactly. The fact that's even a debate is slightly mind-numbing to me, but there you go. Got a good izakaya, bring it, indeed, yes. Big fan of excessive content, indeed. Oh God, please don't watch movies about that, and please don't talk about movies like that here. Have I been to Hiroshima, the museum there? I went there when I was in junior high school. I'm saying Japanese. The equivalent of junior high school. New Zealand high school is junior and senior high. But yeah, I went there when I was like 15. It's funny, I haven't been back I went to Nagasaki as well when I was about 20. So I've been to both. And both are remarkable places. One thing that, to be fair, the only really politicized museum that I've been to is Yasukuni. And by the way, that's it. And even then, the Yasukuni Museum is still if you're into war museums or war history, it still is worth going to. As controversial as Yasukuni is, it's worth going to the museum there. Yes, it does have a political sort of narrative with the exhibits there, but the exhibits are really cool. Yeah, it has to be said. I mean, and they have amazing history and amazing detail. And, again, while it's lopsided in like the opposite way of what you get in the accounts of World War II. You've got the newspaper articles from the time, diary accounts of the soldiers. They feature for the Tokyo tribunals. They're the only judgment that they have framed in huge letters is that of Justice Pell, who was a dissenting judge who said this is all Victor's justice, this is BS. He was the Indian judge, noting that there was all basically white colonials who had Paolon sort of, who no doubt looked and he felt himself like he was being used as a token judge to legitimize sort of the white Victor's justice. And Pell said that directly in his dissenting judgments against the Tokyo war criminals. Of course, that's the only thing that they feature there, but it's a cool museum. What's interesting about the Nagasaki and the Hiroshima museums, and what's always important to remember about the history and the perception of the war from those places, is that you'd think these would be places that would demonize America, and they don't. When you go to to those war museums or the war memorials in Nagasaki and Hiroshima, they describe the events, but they mainly describe the effects of the bomb. They describe the fact of what the bomb was and how it was dropped, and these were the effects. They don't demonize. They don't say that this is the Americans and this was unnecessary, and neither do they say that as some Americans would like, the justifications that the West had for using the bomb, that they wanted to force an unconditional surrender to save lives of people going into Japan or whatever. They don't go into the politics of it. They're very apolitical, but they focus on the victims, which again I know some people get irritated by the idea that just presenting Japan as the victims isn't the full context. But I think that's kind of the approach, and it's even the approach here, where they're sort of matter-of-factly just presenting very stale, neutral sort of facts in a way. I mean, this is in the case of Nagasaki and Hiroshima, the facts themselves are powerful enough, and frankly, sometimes you get so wrapped up in who deserved it and whose fault it was, you stop looking at this is a terrible thing, that shouldn't be used again. If you get too wrapped up in the politics, I think it becomes easier to do again. I think that's the power of those exhibits. And also important to remember that Hiroshima and Nagasaki, very much politically very left-wing and blame the central government and the fascists for the war. In fact, playing up how much they suffered is kind of a backhanded slap at the wartime government of Japan, because by not blaming the Americans, they're inherently saying that this is the result of the war that they know was brought on by the adventurism of the Japanese military and the people that took control of the government. So it's kind of anti-government, but in a very understated way that I guess is hard to pick up on. But I haven't been back, and I should go back. I mean, Hiroshima is just a great place to go to as a tourist place, one of the best places to go to in Japan. As is Nagasaki, actually. Nagano is great, but I won't be visiting the Unit 731 Nagano Museum anytime soon. The fact that they're even debating adding context to that is kind of mind-blowing to me in the current context, but there you go. Going down the comments, Tokyo 503, good to see you. Any Netflix recommendations? I stopped subscribing to Netflix just before I came out to America, so I've been off for about 4 months now. I have been watching, I caught up to season 3 of Ted Lasso. I've been watching Apple TV, so I just caught up, and now there's like 1 episode left of Ted Lasso, which I'm enjoying. It took me a long time to pick it up. I heard everybody raving about how good it was, and I was like, why would I want to watch that? But I picked it up and I watched it, and it's great. So I'm very much enjoying Ted Lasso. I'm also watching Silo, which is, it's okay, I'm watching it. But I'm not watching a lot at the moment. Trying to think of, I'm looking forward to Foundation and so on coming back, and I liked all the Star Wars stuff that was on Disney+. But I'm not finding a lot of stuff that I really want to watch lately, so I'm up for recommendations myself. You're watching Sumo World Sanctuary. Okay, that sounds pretty cool. First 2 episodes are heavy going, but watchable. 6 more episodes to go. Is that a documentary or is that like a drama? Sumo stables. Just the problem that the sumo stables have, that young people don't want to be sumo wrestlers anymore. You talk about how hard that is. Set aside the fact you have to wipe you literally have to wipe the bum of your training master. And no one wants to do that. The way also that they literally train people to death and occasionally beat people to death in those stables. You could make a really bleak fiction. Even a documentary account would probably be really tough. So I'm kind of curious about that. I don't know anything about it. Aaron asked me, have I heard of Team Lab? Have I heard of Team Lab? I have met, in fact, somewhere on my channel, if you go deep into, if you look up Hiko Simon Team Lab, it's got me interviewing the founder of Team Lab, actually. He's a really cool, interesting guy. Back when I was really pushing Creative Commons stuff, he set up a music site like years ago, 15 years ago, and I interviewed him about that actually at the Team Lab headquarters back when Team Lab only had like 10 people. The Team Lab exhibits around Tokyo are amazing. I've been to them. The one in where is it? Toyocho, not Toyocho, around Toyoso, something like that. They've got the Team Lab planets and stuff. They set up those exhibits. They're amazing. Team Lab is awesome. Highly recommend. But yeah. So, that's where you're going? That is awesome. Oh, Team Lab planets. Okay, sorry. That's exactly. I went there. We had some visitors to Japan after the pandemic, and we took them out there, and it was cool. Yeah, you're going to really enjoy it. It's awesome. Are you staying there? Or are you just going? You're going here in Tokyo. Well, anyway, that's going to be all. I've been there, and it's awesome. So, if that's Team Lab Planets, which I assume it is by the URL, if I click the link. Team Lab Planets. Yes, I have been there. In fact, I've got photos of me again on my Insta. I've got photos of me in that place. You can probably find. So, yeah. Team Lab's awesome. That's great. That's a highly recommended to do in Tokyo. Back into the chat. China is the new Russia. China really doesn't want Japan attending NATO. One thing I am keeping up with here, for better or for worse, is the Ukraine war. Still unfathomable to me how anyone can be neutral on, even feign neutral. The President Lula in the G7 in Tokyo saying that, everybody here seems very gung-ho supporting Ukraine, but we'd prefer that there's not a war. I think everyone would prefer, and Dr. Mahathir Mohamad of Malaysia saying that, the West is being very pro-war in Malaysia, in Ukraine. This is like a country invading another country. It's like we're not pro-war, we're just not invading other countries. And again, if they were invaded, would they not want help? Would they prefer peace? I don't know. It's such a simple thing. It's the same thing with NATO. Again, countries that sign up to NATO are signing up not as part of an American plot to encircle China or Russia. It's basically people that don't want to be invaded by large, scary dictatorships. Totally natural that Japan is participating in the extended activities of NATO as part of their sort of normalization, and as a defensive alliance that which are of democracies. Yeah, hell yeah. I mean, again, kind of China wanting taking under advisement. The fact that as well that the Reiwa Shinsengumi, which is like a far left wing party, which gets some points, like they've got two, like I believe, I don't, the terminology has probably changed, but disabled people with disabilities. They gave their list seats to people with special needs, which resulted, in needs to make modifications to the Diet. But it was part of their whole thing that they're so pro-welfare and pro-looking after people that, they want to make sure that those voices are directly included in Parliament, that they made their members that. So, very pro-welfare, very pro-left and whatever, but yet they've been speaking out that, again, everybody should stop supporting Ukraine because it's just it's just creating a war. To me, it's just a morally reprehensible position from a party that kind of tries to claim the moral high ground on welfare issues. Like, how is supporting the invasion of a democracy, a shaky democracy, but the invasion of a country defensible? And again, you look at all the polls of countries of ambiguity, pro-Russia, neutral, pro-Ukraine. Japan is among of OECD countries among the most unwaveringly pro-Ukraine, and because they know Russia. I've talked about this all these times, and it's kind of the same with China. Japan just has a long history, where Japan's also no doubt been the bad guy for a lot of the history as well, but Japan's used to dealing with their crap, and so it shouldn't be ambiguous. And Sachifu and so on. I mean, it's good. See, this is the thing. It's good and right. It kills me when you have a party that appears to be so focused on doing the right thing can come out with something so diametrically opposed to the right thing at the same time. Like, they can be so good on some issues and bad on others. This is a problem when you have a TV celebrity try to become a politician, I guess, that you get this. And it just, it also raises your expectations. and then lowers them. But yeah, of course, this is the point. How can they be so conscientious in some ways and so completely unconscientious in others? Just baffles me. Speaking of being unconscientious, this morning again. Oh God, how do I phrase this? Japan has a desperate underrepresentation of women in politics. And, something like 1 in 10 lawmakers in parliament in Japan, one of the lowest in the world, are women. And there's always these talks about how to increase, the number of women lawmakers. And it means that parties are looking, some parties very proactively, some parties in Japan, again, like Reiwa Shinsengumi, have their list, like more than 50% female. Some use quotas and so on. And it's important for representation to do that. But there's always this bumpy phase in the adjustment when, by raising up and trying to put people into positions maybe they're not ready for, maybe they've just gotten into parliament and they're not used to sort of common sense in that world. The other problem being as well that when you are such a small visible minority in parliament, you draw more attention. I'm sure that there are male politicians who say stuff as dumb and twice as dumb and as offensive as this lawmaker Mizuho Umemura said in the Senate of Japan. But it draws extra attention when it's a young woman. And what she said was, again, questioning cooperation with prosecutors investigating the death of the Sri Lankan immigration detainee who was basically died after being denied medical attention. Kind of said, hey, she might have been hunger striking. She might have just done it to herself, and she might have been faking her illness, and eventually just died because of hunger striking, which is just completely just made up herself and said this in Parliament to sort of speculate that maybe why is the government even cooperating with the family on this? Again, from an opposition party that's trying. I mean, this is the Osaka First Party, essentially the Ishin Party that she's from. But how someone could go up and say something so offensive and stupid and made up, to the credit of the Osaka First Party, the Ishin Japan Restoration Party, they yanked her from the committee that she's on and replaced her and sort of reprimanded her and so on. And they're suspending her activities in Parliament because she's kind of so unhinged. And this is where it's important to get good representation as well. So it shouldn't reflect on the role of women, but again, it's one of these things where you really want, the press around women representation to be good because it needs to increase. But so I suppose that's not really the thing. Is that this particular individual is just a terrible human being and stupid and has no place being in Parliament. And hopefully they can find someone better to replace her with. But again, it's good to see the party doing that to replace her. But what can we do? David Guzman, opinions on the immigration law. You mean the amended immigration law? I'm trying to remember it now. So this is where, it sounds like, from what I've read, the summaries of it, it's kind of more trying to justify and shore up the Japanese government's position on rejecting refugees more efficiently than it is on actually correcting Japan's completely immoral position of, rejecting like 99.9% of refugee applications, which is the current position. So it doesn't look very impressive from what I've seen, although I haven't gone deep into the detail of it. But thanks for asking, David Guzman. This is kind of cool. So I was really following this Hakuto lunar lander. Japanese private space company had a lunar lander. Space stuff is also the only thing that's as cool or possibly even cooler than the AI stuff at the moment is the space stuff. You have this Japanese private company. It's interesting because a bunch of countries and private companies have tried to land little mini space probes on the surface of the moon, which it's right there. It should be. If we can do this sort of thing now on, asteroids and planets and comets and so on, we should be able to do it on the moon. And it's kind of funny how everyone, including, unfortunately, Hakuto, which had this very, very clever, long sort of meandering orbit to get into the moon for a very gentle sort of trajectory to get into, to lose its momentum, to be able to land softly on the surface of the moon with like basically like a suitcase-sized probe, but that would be able to move around on the surface and so on. Just as a proof of concept that it would be able to, that a Japanese company would be able to successfully land a probe on the surface of the moon and have it go around and control it, which to me would be super cool. Like, we should be doing this everywhere. We should already be mining up there, if you ask me. So what went wrong apparently is the same thing that went wrong with the Indian probe, with the Israeli probe, and a couple of other private probes, which all failed due to software. I saw there's a rocket channel I like to follow called Scott Manley. The guy who runs it's called Scott Manley, and he talked about apparently they figured out what happened with this. And it's the same problem that all these other things have. It's one of the big problems about landing things on other worlds, is that judging altitude is really difficult. We sort of have this idea of how a plane judges altitude on Earth. It's not based just on the distance to the nearest land, because we have this idea of sea level, and we can judge based on air pressure and so on. Even if the land is getting mountainous and there's only like 100 feet between you and the plane, but that's at 10,000 feet, you know that you're at 10,100 feet. But you don't have any sea level or baseline or way of measuring against an imagined sort of universal baseline on the moon or on Mars. And so the result is that they sort of take an average distance to the surface, basically by just like radar, by measuring the distance to the ground. And the problem is that, again, where the software is programmed that when you get weird data, something that suddenly is like dramatically different numbers, the software is sort of programmed to disregard such data as being like an anomaly, like that's like a glitch or something, that suddenly it says that the ground's like gone from being 100 kilometers to 1 foot. When that's impossible, it would set that aside. And that's what it did in this case. It flew over a sudden crater rim that just suddenly caused such an ascent that it started ignoring the data, and basically it descended to where it thought the surface was based on its memorized, imagined surface of the moon, and basically this sort of sudden crater wall caused it to start ignoring the radar data it was getting to the surface of how far away the surface was, and it landed softly, perfectly, 5 kilometers above the actual surface of the moon. So it just dropped from 5 kilometers above, and it smashed into little pieces, unfortunately, on the moon. And this is the problem everyone's been having, and it's a problem obviously you want to figure out before you start having people land there. When you have human pilots, like Apollo 11, they manually flew and manually landed on the surface, but obviously the automated systems will have to fix that. It's still cool. I mean, they almost got there. It's getting close, but it's a shame. I was really rooting for them, especially seeing a private Japanese company doing something cool like that. But what can you do? Sachifu. Scott Manley is the best. I'm glad you know Scott Manley. It's a good channel. It is a good channel. Christos, good to see you. Got to go back to the start. Hey, hang around. I'm going to try. Don't think I'm on here for that much long. Got a few more topics in here anyway. There was a big earthquake. It's kind of been a swarm of earthquakes, which is kind of alarming. In fact, there have been so many earthquakes that the weather agency actually said within the next week there was going to be like a 98% chance of there being a decent earthquake, in like medium to large size earthquake in the Tokyo area. And this happened just after a magnitude 6.2 quake, which in the Chiba area off the coast, basically near Narita, where that little X is, where the airport is, was a lower 5. Again, the Japanese intensity scale, the shaking scale in Japan. Remember, magnitude is not a shaking scale, it's an energy scale. It's like measuring a rainstorm by the liters of water in it rather than how much rain falls in a particular place. The intensity scale that Japan uses in Tokyo was a Shindo 3, Shindo 4. When it gets into lower 5, upper 5, lower 6, when it gets 5 and above, you're talking about damage. You're talking about stuff falling over. You're talking about, to old rickety houses getting damaged and stuff like that. A lower 5 is a damage-causing quake, which is rare, relatively. So they had a proper quake, and the fact that it's part of a swarm of quakes is not a good sign. It's a reminder as well. I mean, apart from the fact you've got the big Nankai quake that everyone's waiting for, the quake that comes up from the south of the map and hits Osaka and, the Shikoku and those islands. That's the mega quake that everyone's waiting for. But there is still also, after, of course, the Great East Japan earthquake, all the stress that came off, or that from the plates moving in the whole north of Japan. All of that pressure got transferred to all of the seismic boundaries just off Tokyo. So that's where the next pressure release has to happen. So hopefully this isn't part of that. I mean, it's 100% inevitable that there are going to be large quakes around Tokyo. There was a large quake. I was glad to hear that everyone sounded like they were okay. And it wasn't much more than a tremor just in Tokyo, but yeah. Yeah, in Korea, kind of interesting that these things have always been so politicized with the comfort woman, where the government's established funds ended up not paying out. Have I lost my internet? Oh God, I hope not. Where the government established funds, people refuse to take the compensation because they want it to be presented grovelingly to them by the emperor, and this is why Japanese apologies never work. It's good to see that for the slave laborers from Korea used for war labor, that there are now people accepting compensation, which is what they were suing in courts for, being paid by the Korean government. So that's another baby step, but a positive step nonetheless. Also, somebody asked me the other day, I think there's only a couple more stories left that I've got here. Yeah, that's it. There was a shooting in Osaki Station. Apparently, in fact, this is a different one. This is a different story to the one that I meant to talk about. There was another incident in Nagano as well, but there was an incident in Osaki Station in Tokyo. Apparently, a Yakuza person was arrested for shooting somebody in front of a train station. Super rare, of course, in Japan, and the fact that the person arrested is in the mob, and I believe the person who was shot was also in the mob. That sort of gang violence and those gang wars was very common in the late 90s in particular. There was particularly the Sumiyoshi, the Western Japan Sumiyoshi was moving in on and this is where the time of Jake Adelstein's Tokyo Vice book was during the age of these different warring Yakuza factions. Those Yakuza groups are so locked down now, you very seldom hear anything about them anymore. Again, the whole My Number thing is also partly aimed at reducing their ability to do anything. So yeah, it's kind of, to me, it's a bit of a throwback to hear about a violent shooting attack in Tokyo. And that it happened at a regular train station with civilians around and so on is also very disturbing. What I can tell you though is that it is rare, and it seems Yakuza against Yakuza, but disturbing to hear anyway. Again, I haven't seen all the news about it because I've been here, but that's the thing. And the final two, Kishida apparently, so after the G7, he's riding high. The opposition is in a mess, so the thought is that he might call for an election soon, which they'll probably win because the opposition here is hopeless, as you all know. And just today, it's funny, the Japan PM wants to have another round of abductee talks with North Korea, which North Korea isn't really interested in. They released some abductees and they never got anything back from it, so they've said we're not going to talk about it anymore. And chances are that the abducted Japanese people are probably all, they're getting to the point where they would be ending normal natural life expectancy by now. And in fact, North Korea responded announcing that they'll be doing some more ICBM tests where they think they'll be firing over Japan. So they've kind of responded back the opposite. It would be good to see any kind of progress with North Korea, not just for the sake of releasing prisoners being held by North Korea, but also just, I'm still hopeful in my lifetime. I can't see how it would happen, but I hope that North Korea can normalize and we can all go over there and hang out and be friends. That'd be nice. So, not problem here. No TV, says Shubas. So that's all the topics I have. Anyway, thank you for keeping me company. I'm sorry I've skipped a week, and I will try to make sure I get a recorded show in at least for the next few weeks. Again, just because the last few weeks I'm going to try to cram and do as much as possible. I did a 15-mile trail run and hike yesterday, and I'm doing an 8-mile hike tomorrow. I'm going to LA. I'm doing different things. So, the weekends, please understand, I won't always be able to get back and be able to do this in time on the weekends. Even if I have to record it during the week and if I have to record it late at night, I really do like it when all of you are able to keep me company. It's nice to have these East Coast folks on. And I do try to time it for that. But I think just for these last few weeks, I'm going to try to do as much as possible, make the most of my time in America, as you can see I've been doing. Because, I'll be going back soon. But I still want to keep this going. So I will record some shows. And I'll certainly do a big wrap-up, I think. Maybe after I get back to Japan, actually a big reflection on America. But I've really enjoyed it here. I really have. I came here treating it like it would be an adventure. I've had some stuff go on here as well. Did I mention I got kidney stones? And that I was in the ER. I got kidney stones and I was in the ER, but yes, I did mention that. I've had some other things as well, which again, hopefully I can talk about later on. But yes, it's been a very, very full experience here. But overall, it's been really great. And I do love being here, but I'm also really looking forward to going back to Japan, even though it's going to be at an absolutely miserable time of year with the Japanese summer. But yeah, I do appreciate your keeping me company. Chris H, I will I will enjoy my hike, but I tell you what, I can barely move today. I've just been doing nothing today. And I was craving food because I used up so much energy, so I went for a huge pizza and I overate. So I need the hike for tomorrow just to balance that out, I guess. But yeah, I will enjoy the hike and I will continue enjoying America. As a medical bill, I'm covered by insurance. I still have to pay some, but yeah, it's fine. It's not, fortunately, I'm covered by work health insurance, so that's all good. I will enjoy my last month in the USA. Thank you very much, Darren. And everybody, have a good week. Do take care of yourselves. And yeah, I'll be back again hopefully next week. And keep following me on Twitter. I'm still posting on Mastodon. I'm not getting a lot of interaction there. So Twitter really is the place to keep up. I'm on Facebook, of course, as well. And yeah, and of course, Slake Manson, good to see you. Happy Memorial Day indeed. And yeah, to everybody, have a good rest of your week. And yeah, hopefully see you next week. Anyway, and look out for more stuff coming. And doing a meetup in Tokyo even after that. So yeah, cool. Peace. Boom. Ending stream.